Every day she held the elevator for a quiet man, but what she discovered when she was called to the top floor will leave you speechless. Emily always arrived 5 minutes early for work, still groggy with sleep and wearing her badge like a reminder that she was just one more intern among many. She waited for the elevator in the 38-story corporate building, and every time the doors opened, he was there. A quiet man with a discreet look, bald, impeccably dressed, but never flashy. He never said good morning, just gave a subtle nod like a silent thank you. Even though no one in management ever noticed her, Emily made it a point to hold the door for him every day, like an unspoken ritual with no real purpose. Work on the 17th floor was anything but easy. Her supervisor, Lindsay, loved showing who was in charge. She made a habit of calling Emily the intern out loud, corrected her in front of others, and assigned her only the most repetitive tasks. The rest of the team just laughed it off or pretended not to see. Emily swallowed it all because she needed the opportunity, because her mom always said, "You have to prove your worth in silence." Then, one Friday morning, she saw the quiet man collapse in the hallway, clutching his chest just before the elevator doors could close. Panic spread through the building, but Emily was the only one who dropped to her knees beside him. She called for help, held his head in her lap, tried to speak to him, but he only squeezed her hand, his eyes glassy and full of fear. By Monday, everything was back to normal. The elevator, the weak coffee, the unwanted tasks. But he wasn't there, and he didn't come back. Weeks went by. Emily had nearly pushed the memory aside, almost until she got a call from HR asking her to come to the top floor. "Mr. Rawlins would like to see you." She hesitated. "Mr. Rawlins?" she asked, confused. The HR woman nodded. "Yes, the owner of the building and president of the Rawlins Group." Emily froze. The quiet man was him. Emily had grown up in a small town in rural Illinois where her biggest dream was to escape the predictable. Her mom had worked at a laundromat for as long as she could remember, and her dad left when she was only 7. Her childhood was filled with hand-me-down clothes, recycled notebooks, and long afternoons watching an old TV that only picked up 2 channels, one of which played documentaries about companies and business success stories. That's what fascinated her most. Ordinary people building something from nothing and changing their lives. When she got into a public university to study business administration, she felt something deep inside her finally breaking the cycle. She moved to the city with a backpack, a suitcase, and a promise to herself. She would do everything right. No mistakes. Her internship at a skyscraper where half the employees didn't even know her name didn't put her anywhere near big decisions. She wasn't involved in important projects. Her role was to prepare operational reports, organize files, and schedule meetings for other people. She was invisible, even while working in the heart of one of the city's busiest companies. Over time, she realized the workplace was more hostile than professional. Colleagues competed quietly, and the senior staff treated newcomers like burdens. Her supervisor, Lindsay, took pleasure in small, passive-aggressive jabs. "Oh, our sweet little intern trying to understand numbers. How cute. Emily, don't be late with the coffee, okay? This is the real world." In the beginning, Emily tried not to take it personally, but at night, she cried softly in the tiny room she shared with 2 roommates. She'd call her mom but didn't tell her everything. She'd just say, "It's tough, but I'll make it." What she didn't realize was that she was being shaped in silence. She was learning to stand firm, to listen, to pay attention, and in the middle of it all, that silent presence in the elevator, the man who never asked, only nodded, was, strangely, the only moment in her day when she didn't feel small. There was something respectful in that silence, something no one else gave her. Little did she know how much that quiet gesture would come to mean. The call to the top floor came on a rainy Tuesday. Emily was trying to finish an endless spreadsheet when her desk phone rang. The HR woman was brief. "Mr. Rawlins would like to see you now." The elevator felt slower than ever as it climbed. She had never gone higher than the 21st floor. The top floor was a kind of myth among interns, rumored to be where million-dollar decisions were made by people who didn't even know they existed. As she stepped out, Emily found herself in a quiet reception area with thick carpet and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a full view of the city. An assistant led her into a large room where he was waiting. The man was sitting now in a dark suit, showing none of the frailty from the day he collapsed. His face, once weary, now looked calm, and his voice, finally breaking the silence, filled the room. "Thank you for not stepping over me that day." Emily swallowed hard. She had no idea what to say. Most people would have just shouted for help. But you stayed. You got down on the floor, held my hand, even though you had no idea who I was. He gestured toward a chair. Emily sat, nervous. "I'm Richard Rawlins, founder of the Rawlins Group. Most people think I'm retired, and I let them think that. Every now and then I like to walk around unnoticed, just observe." He paused, then continued. "For months I saw you. The way you treat others, even when they don't return the kindness. The way you go above and beyond, and most of all, I saw how you're treated." Emily looked down. "And I'd like to make you an offer," he said, leaning forward. But before he could say more, the door swung open. It was Lindsay. "Excuse me, Mr. Rawlins," she said, clearly surprised to see Emily there. "I thought this meeting was with the new consultant." Richard looked at her, unfazed. "No, I'm with Miss Adams." Lindsay gave a stiff smile, shot Emily a look full of veiled contempt, and left. But the damage was already done. That same afternoon, Lindsay called Emily in for a private chat on the 17th floor. With a cold smile, she handed her a letter. "We've decided to end your internship early. The company is going through restructuring. Nothing personal." Emily felt the ground fall away beneath her. No explanation, no chance to speak. Just a sudden, cold, and cruel goodbye. She left the building carrying a box with 2 notebooks, a picture frame, and a mug. No tears, just silence. The same silence that once comforted her in the elevator, now felt like it was abandoning her all over again. She had no idea. This was just the beginning of the turning point. Emily spent the following days shut inside her small dorm room, unable to get out of bed. Her phone rang and she let it ring. Unread emails piled up. For the first time since moving to the city, she wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she had misjudged herself, her strength. The dismissal letter still sat there, folded on the corner of her desk. Next to it, the handwritten note Richard Rawlins had quietly tucked into her box the same day she was let go. "Emily, true worth doesn't shine under spotlights. Call when you're ready. RR." She read that note every day, but couldn't bring herself to dial the number, until one Wednesday afternoon a message arrived. "I need you to come to the building, room 38C, just trust." It came from an unknown number. Emily hesitated. But something inside her, maybe the same instinct that made her hold the elevator every day without knowing why, pushed her forward. The next day, she returned to the building through the visitor's entrance, took the elevator to the top floor, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. In room 38C, she found Richard at the table with 2 other people, a grey-haired man and a poised woman with a sharp gaze. He introduced them as co-founders of the Rawlins Foundation, a little-known initiative that funded social projects and selected high-potential youth for internal leadership programs. "I want you to join our advanced leadership training," Richard said, with the calm of someone who had made up his mind long ago. "It's an intense program. Very few are invited, and you are the youngest we've ever nominated." Emily's eyes widened. "But I was fired." "Exactly, because you made people uncomfortable. Not because you were bad, but because you were too good for that floor." In the months that followed, Emily dove into the program, hands-on classes, mentoring, corporate crisis simulations. She met real stories of resilience, people who had failed and started over, entrepreneurs who had come from poverty and built businesses with real social impact. But more than anything, Emily reconnected with herself. She rediscovered what truly moved her, the desire to make a real difference, not to be seen, but to leave a mark. Now she woke up early, not out of obligation, but out of purpose. She studied with a spark in her eyes, and little by little, something inside her began to shift. The insecurity was being replaced by a quiet confidence. The same kind she had once seen in that man's eyes back in the elevator. Emily was being reborn, and she had no idea the past was about to return, ready to test her in a way she never imagined. The Rawlins Foundation program lasted 6 months, but it felt like years of growth packed into every week. Emily faced challenges she had never imagined. Before, leading a team, pitching real-world business solutions, navigating simulated ethical dilemmas that mirrored the realities of corporate life, she began to stand out. Not with flashy charisma like what was admired in typical office spaces, but with clarity, empathy, and a rare ability to solve problems with sensitivity. It was during this time that she met Ava, one of the program's most respected mentors. Ava was a former international executive who had walked away from the top of a multinational company to train purpose-driven leaders. She saw something in Emily, a quiet strength that just needed direction. And she offered more than advice. She offered a real opportunity. You don't have to be like them, Emily. The world is full of hard leaders. What we lack are human leaders. You have that. You just need to trust yourself, Ava once told her after a presentation that left the entire room moved. Over time, Emily stopped walking with her shoulders down, stopped apologizing when entering a room, stopped hesitating before speaking. She began wearing clothes that made her feel powerful, not to impress others, but to remind herself of who she was becoming. She was then invited to lead a real initiative by the Foundation, a business recovery program for small companies impacted by the pandemic. The mission was to provide free consulting, emotional support, and practical tools to business owners on the edge of collapse. And it was through this process that Emily realized how far she had come. She was no longer the invisible intern fetching coffee and getting ignored in the elevator. Now she looked people in the eye, asked hard questions, and made decisions. Emily was no longer just surviving. She was leading. And when the project was finally presented to the Rawlins Group board weeks later, she was the one invited to deliver the final pitch. The presentation took place on the top floor. In the very same room where it had all begun, Richard Rawlins watched silently with a subtle smile. When it ended, he was the first to applaud. Congratulations, Emily. You're not just ready, you're already making a difference. But before she could celebrate, someone unexpectedly walked into the room. Lindsay, wearing a brand new blazer and carrying an expression that clearly hadn't anticipated exactly who was sitting there. The past had returned, bringing the final test with it. Lindsay entered with a confident smile and purposeful steps, as if that floor were familiar territory. She wore a new badge. She had just been appointed to the strategic consulting team at Rawlins Group, a promotion she had been proudly posting about on social media. What she didn't expect was to see Emily at the main table, surrounded by board members and senior mentors. Lindsay's eyes flickered for a moment. A flash of doubt crossed her face, but she quickly recovered and forced a smile. Emily, wow, it's been a while. Her voice was sweet, but laced with subtle venom. Didn't know you were still around. Emily stood with calm composure. She looked Lindsay straight in the eyes, the same woman who had once fired her without a shred of empathy, like discarding a dead weight. I am working on the new business revitalization project. We just finished presenting it to the board. Lindsay blinked. The tension hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Richard Rawlins, seated at the back of the room, watched silently, arms crossed, focused. Oh, interesting, Lindsay replied, trying to mask her discomfort. I thought you had moved on. Emily gave a slight smile, not one of arrogance, but of awareness. I did. I took a path that began the day I was shown the door and ended with an invitation to walk back in through the front. Lindsay swallowed hard, tried to laugh. But no one laughed with her. The tension grew as Richard finally spoke. Ms. Thornton, he said, using her last name with elegant coldness, I hope this time you'll treat the company's talent with better judgment. Miss Adams is one of the leaders of our new impact division, and ironically, you'll be reporting directly to her on this project. The silence that followed was absolute. Lindsay turned pale. Sorry, what do you mean, reporting to? Richard stood up, walked to the door, and before leaving simply said, "Some underestimate the value of silence, others listen and transform." Then he walked out, leaving Lindsay alone in front of everyone. Most of all, in front of Emily. After the confrontation, Emily felt a strange kind of silence settle inside her. It wasn't anger, it wasn't relief, it was understanding. That night, she sat in her small apartment in front of her closed laptop. No music, no lights. Just staring into the dark, her mind filled with memories that now carried a new meaning. She remembered carrying stacks of documents, the whispered jokes in the elevator, the meetings where she was invisible, the way she used to shrink, not just physically but emotionally, before anyone with more power. But now she saw it all differently. She realized that seeing Lindsay again wasn't about revenge, it was a mirror. Emily didn't need to prove anything anymore. She didn't need to beat her. Because simply being there, with dignity, with respect, and with earned recognition, was the victory. In the days that followed, she began visiting interns from other departments. She'd chat with them in hallways, lunchrooms, during breaks. She wanted them to know someone saw them, that someone cared. One day, as she stepped into the elevator, she held the door open for a breathless young woman. She looked about 20, arms full of spreadsheets, her badge labeled intern. The girl smiled gratefully. "Thank you. I thought I was going to miss the meeting." Emily smiled back. "I used to run like that too. You were an intern here?" Emily nodded, her gaze kind. "And now?" Emily said calmly, "Now I make sure no intern ever feels invisible." The elevator doors closed, but inside there was something you couldn't see, the quiet strength of a woman who had found herself again and was now holding the door open for others. The room slowly emptied, leaving only Emily and Lindsay. The woman who once held the power was now seated in silence, staring at the young woman she once discarded like she was nothing. Emily didn't rush. She neatly organized her papers, slid her laptop into her bag, and only then turned to face her. "I don't hold a grudge," she said with a voice calm and steady. "But I haven't forgotten either." Lindsay looked away, unsettled by the silence now coming from someone she used to belittle. "People change, Emily. The environment was tough. Everything was happening so fast, you know how it is." Emily interrupted her, gracefully but firmly. "Oh, I know exactly how it was, and that's why I'm here now. To change this culture, where cruelty gets promoted and sensitivity gets tossed aside." Lindsay let out a nervous laugh. "So now you're my boss." Emily didn't answer right away. She walked to the window, looked out at the city below, then turned back. "I'm not your boss, but I am the leader of this project, and you'll need to work with me, not for me, not under me, with me. And I hope, this time, you bring more than rehearsed lines and fake smiles." Lindsay lowered her eyes. There were no raised voices, no humiliation, just a presence that now commanded the room, with the quiet power of someone who had rebuilt her dignity in silence. "You can start by reading the project report and identifying the small businesses most affected by your former department. We'll focus on helping them first." Emily walked toward the door. "Oh, and please, use my full name in all communications. Emily Adams, it matters now." And she left without looking back. Lindsay stayed behind, silent, alone. Exactly how she had once left Emily, months before. That night, Emily walked home. The cold wind brushed against her face, but something warm stirred inside her. A kind of peace she had never felt before. The peace of someone who no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. She passed by the building where it all began. The security guard at the entrance smiled as he recognized her. "Good evening, Miss Adams." He opened the door with genuine respect. She stepped inside, just to go up to the 17th floor one more time. The floor where she had once been invisible. The floor where she had cried in the bathroom, where she was treated as less. The floor where she almost believed she had no worth. She stopped in front of the old office, where she used to stack papers and take orders without being seen. She looked at it for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and then turned around. On the way down, she pressed the elevator button with the same gentleness as always. The doors opened. Empty. This time, there was No one to hold the door for. And yet she did it anyway, as if telling herself, I'm still the same, but now I know who I am. In the months that followed, Emily officially took over a division of the Rawlins Foundation, focused on empowering young leaders from underprivileged backgrounds. She created mentorship programs, opened internship spots with more human and inclusive criteria, and made it a point to visit every part of the company, including the lower floors, where many were still overlooked. She started receiving invitations to give talks, lead workshops, write articles, but she turned most of them down. She preferred to stay among the quiet ones, the ones still holding doors open without being seen, because, now she knew, it's in silence that true worth is revealed. Sometimes the greatest turning point happens in silence, and it's in that silence that dignity is reborn. It's not the loudest voice that changes the world, it's the one that never forgets to look at those who remain quiet. If this story touched you, don't forget to like and share. Sometimes, a small gesture changes everything.